Mike, welcome back. It was about just over 12 months since we last spoke. Look, I love the story. Maybe you can give us a recap of Antler and New World, where you guys are, and then let's hear the good stuff that's come about.
Thanks, Noel. Yeah, look, great to be back. We probably should have been here a little sooner because we've had a lot going on in the last 12 months. Maybe if I step right back to the beginning of the story, the involvement in Antler really came about almost 4 years ago now, and deliberately, corporately, our company New World set about finding a high-grade copper deposit that we could bring into production in the second half of this decade, because even 4 years ago we anticipated that copper prices were going to be a lot higher in the second half of this decade than they were 4 years ago. So we deliberately sought out a high-grade deposit, and because we wanted grade, we deliberately searched for VMS deposits, and we had an operating team in the US, and corporately we're based in Australia, so we searched those two jurisdictions. Very quickly we acquired a project down in New Mexico, a VMS project, and a couple of months later we secured the Antler copper project. And that was, I first visited Antler in December 2019, and I've got to admit, since then, every step along the way, which is a real rarity in this business, but every step along the way, the Antler project has exceeded expectations. And for the last 3 years, it's continued to exceed expectations.
I think what you just said there, when I'm reading through, obviously, it's been 12 months since I looked at your stuff and followed you, bits and pieces. It is very, 2021 was when you basically announced that you got this thing, I think, if I'm correct.
2020, March 2020. Yep.
And between then and now, you've increased the resource by 50% from your previous resource. It's done a lot, and it seems to be always giving. VMS has that history of continuous giving up, So is that what you're seeing now? You're feeling, obviously, you've done all that work, right?
Yeah, look, when we acquired the project, so Antler it is a historic producer. It was in production most recently in 1970, so 52 years ago. There was small-scale production from Antler. And at the time, copper price was 45 cents a pound, and at the production rates that they were mining at, it wasn't economic to mine it. So they shut down operations and mining never resumed at Antler. Now, when we acquired the asset, we knew that there was a deposit there. It was extremely high grade. It was roughly 3%. Historic production was roughly 3% copper and 6% zinc, or we refer to it as 5% copper equivalent, just for simplicity, rather than having to talk about copper and lead and zinc and gold and silver credits. We simplify that down into copper equivalent. So the historic grade was around 5% copper equivalent. At the time, there had been some very deep drill holes, very widely spaced, and some very widely spaced holes drilled along strike that suggested to us that maybe there was 5 million tonnes or thereabouts of mineralisation. There was indicators that there might have been 5 million tonnes. So in March 2020, we secured the rights to the project and we started drilling. And by November 2021, so 18 months later, we'd put together a JORC resource of 7.7 million tonnes. So basically 50% greater than our initial expectations. And the grade of that resource was 3.9% copper equivalent. But at the time, we'd only drilled to 500 metres depth. So historic working had been down to 150 metres depth. We drilled underneath that and progressively, over 18 months, drilled down deeper down to 500 metres depth. And we continued to intersect exceptionally thick, exceptionally high-grade mineralisation. Now, we continued to drill, but equally we used that 7.7 million tonne resource to start thinking about, well, what can we mine here? We've completed an economic study, a scoping study, to determine what sort of rate we can mine at and what sort of capital cost it would take, what sort of operating costs we might be looking at, and what sort of production profile we might be looking at over what time frame. So we've completed that on the back of the 7.7 million tonne resource, But while we've been doing that scoping study, we've continued to drill deeper and deeper, and we've now drilled down to 850, 900 metres depth, and still the mineralisation's there. This is just in this one deposit alone. So as you ask about VMS deposits, this VMS deposit is now clearly at least 900 metres deep. The biggest ones in the world can go down 3 kilometres depth. So maybe we can go another kilometre. Maybe we can go another 2 kilometres. Who knows? But if we do, the resource is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But equally, these VMS deposits, almost always around the world, where there's one, there's another one. And often where there's two, there's a third one. So just in the last 3 months, we've started looking along strike because we've got a lot of look-alike geochemical and geophysical anomalies that indicate to us, well, maybe there's 2 or 3 just in our land holding alone. We know there's another one 6 kilometres away that is outside of our land holding. It's just a small one that's owned by a private group of individuals. So we know there's 2, and where there's 2, there may well be 3.